So my grandma gave me this cup that because she doesn't really use these teacups too much anymore. Oh, my dog is just eating, if you hear that. But yeah, I like it because it has the shape. It reminds me of the teacups in Beauty and the Beast. But I have this book called England: A Short History by Goldwyn Smith. I found it at a secondhand store thing. I haven't read through it, so I'm just going to read a little bit from the beginning. I wonder when it's from. Does it say the year? Hold on, I can have to turn the pages. 1971. Oh, it has that old book smell. I haven't opened it since I got it. I might just skip this part. I don't know what it is. I guess I'll read it since it's there. Now know next religion, there is nothing accomplisheth a man more than learning. Learning in a lord is as a diamond in gold. And if you fear to hurt your tender hands with thorny school questions, there is no danger in meddling with history, which is a velvet study and recreation work. What a pity it is to see a proper gentleman to have such a crick in his neck that he cannot look backward. Yet no better is he who cannot see behind him the actions which long since were performed. History maketh a young man to be old, without either wrinkles or grey hairs, privileging him with the experience of age, without either the infirmities or inconveniences thereof. Yea, it not only maketh things past, present, but enableth one to make a rational conjecture of things to come. For this world affordeth no new accidents, but in the same sense wherein we call it a new moon, which is the old one in another shape, and yet no other than what has been formerly. Old actions return again, furbished over with some new and different circumstances. From the epistle dedicatory to the history of the Holy Ware by Thomas Fuller, Cambridge, 1639. Preface. The modern reader is much interested in the present, the here and now, the temporary world in all its concreteness and complexity. At the same time, he is well aware that the world in which he lives is the result of the achievements and failures of many generations of men. The roots of the present lie deep in the past, and nothing in the past is dead to the man who would learn how the present came to be what it is. These words were written by William Stubbs, D.D., on LLD, Canon Residentiary of St. Paul's, honorary student of Christ Church, Regius Professor of Modern History, and Fellow of Oriel College, Oxford, on Christmas Day, 1873. They are still important and true. History is the vital and vivid tale of the deeds and ideas of a multitude of human beings. The world of all our yesterdays is as complex as the currents and eddies that swirl and push in the streams of history today. The chapters of man's story are not neat, and they are not simple. The scholar who studies and writes about them, the historian, has a hard and heavy task. The leaf so short, the craft so long to learn, the essay so hard, so sharp the conquering. I'm not sure how to say some of these words. Every competent historian must be a scientific detective, prepared to labor long with source materials and tools of many kinds. Most able historians have been imaginative and sympathetic artists. Take from the altars of the past the fire, not the ashes. In writing this brief history of England, it has been necessary, of course, to stress the chronology, the important and changing trials and problems of Englishmen, the leading characters who played their parts upon the stage in this small island, men toughened on the fields of battle, in the courts of law and the world of politics. It has not been possible to let the camera pause for long upon the minor players in the long drama. In various ways, however, I have frequently reminded the reader that the lesser characters, with their fears, hopes, envy, greed, evil, and goodness, their little victories and disasters, were always there. These are the many anonymous, faceless men who lived outside of the ranks of the men widely known in the land, sometimes in the filthy alleys of the towns, or in the dreadful houses of the squatters on the wasteland. Some of them were born, lived, and died in the same parish. The greater part, wrote Sir Thomas Browne, must be content to be as though they had not been, to be found in the register of God, not in the record of man. Many kinds of human beings move across the pages of this book. At the beginning we see our remote ancestors coming out of dark caves, grasping clubs and hurling spears, striking fire from flint. Some men of art and imagination will shape things of beauty to warm their spirits against the chill blasts and the great night without. Men of curiosity will ask questions. Men of skill will make new things. In the closing scenes, we see the world of the 20th century, a world of radio, television, radar, jet planes, the wonders of modern medicine, the incalculable promise and the monstrous perils that have resulted from man's discovery of nuclear power. I hope that the reader will find pleasure and profit in this book. For any errors of fact and interpretation, and my purely private heresies, I ask indulgence. It is a special pleasure to express my appreciation and gratitude to the many people upon whose stores of knowledge and kindness I have so freely drawn. Goldwin Smith. So here's the contents. So the builders, the invaders, Celts, Romans, Anglo-Saxons, Normans, and Angevins. The 13th century, kings and barons. The 14th century, the age of unrest. Lancaster versus York. Part 2, the Tudor and Stuart age. The first Tudors, the later Tudors. Prerogative law and parliament. Civil War and Republic, the later Stuarts. The 18th century, the Walpole era, the struggle for empire. Progress and power, steam, steel, and land. Conflict, Britain and America. Danger and endurance. The 19th century, the Guards and the rebels, the years of reform, the march of Palmerston, Disraeli and Gladstone, the new imperialism, the 20th century, the liberal triumph, the First World War, the search for security, the Second World War, today and tomorrow. Kings of England, Prime Ministers of England, index. Maps. I guess there's a lot of maps in this one. Genealogical charts. The Anglo-Saxon kings of England, the Normans and Angevins, is that how you say that? The Lancastrians and Yorkists, the Tudors and Stuarts, the Hanoverians. Part 1, the builders. Oh, there's a map there. So, English Channel, North Sea, Atlantic Ocean, Irish Sea, St. George's Channel, Bristol Channel, Eastern Plain, Midland Plain, Central Plain, Southern Uplands, Highlands, Hebrides, the invaders, Celts, Romans, Anglo-Saxons. Chapter 1. The Beginnings. A cosmic storm tore the earth from the mother sun between 4 and 7 billion years ago. Slowly the fire and the gases cooled, the basalt and the granite hardened, the rains fell and the oceans were filled. Over untold centuries, the forces of physical geography and climate relentlessly shaped the face of the earth. Plants and animals grew and laid down the petroleum fields and the coal beds of the world. Great sheets of ice held vast areas motionless and desolate. Then the glaciers retreated. 4 times the ice drew back and returned. The last cold period was about 40,000 years ago. Along the western edge of Europe, the sea slowly wore broad channels through soft chalk. In time, the British Isles were separated from Europe. During later centuries, this separation was important to the people of Britain and to the whole world. No single European cultural, political, or economic influence ever ruled suddenly in from the continent to change and control all of Britain. True successive waves of influence did come from all over the English Channel or elsewhere, but they varied in size and length of dominance. Sometimes they flowed into eastern England and never reached Scotland, Wales, and Cornwall. The result was the gradual mingling of many peoples, the slow layering of several strata of cultural and political habits. Deep in the core of English history lie the twin facts that Englishmen live on an island and are sprung from the fusion of many stocks. In the north and west of England are the highland zones. The lowland areas lie in the south and east. These lowland areas were nearest to the early invaders who came from Europe across the English Channel and the North Sea. The rivers were easily navigable, and the lowland plains were fertile, habitable, and easy to seize. At the same time, the Welsh mountains, the Pennines, and the Scottish mountains held up the invaders who came from beyond the seas. The ancient differences between hillsmen and plainsmen, highlanders and lowlanders, were nourished by the facts of geography. The highland areas, particularly in Scotland and Wales, did not welcome alien intruders or foreign ideas. Many pages of Britain's history contain drama and color because of the vigorously distinct characteristics of men long separated by forests, rivers, mountains, moorlands, and marshes. The difficulties of internal communication and complete conquest were to delay the achievement of national unity and to prolong even into the 20th century the power of local patriotism. Often in the history of nations, the important political, social, and economic facts are mainly geographical ones. It's getting hard to breathe with all the dust coming off this book. Okay. The coming of man. It was in the warm lands that human beings first appeared. Remains of the earliest known men have been found in several places. Modern science has been able to tell us the approximate age of these human remains through the use of radioactive carbon-14. In 1891, for instance, a skull cap, some teeth, and a thigh bone were found in Java. We know that these bones belonged to a man who leaped and hunted in the jungles about 500 million years ago. Java man, or Pithecanthropus erectus, was believed for many years to be the first human being. Recent discoveries in Kenya and elsewhere indicate that other human creatures lived before the Java man appeared. Some of the bones unearthed in the 19th century belong to a short and powerful creature called Neanderthal man. He had a big head, a sloping brow, and a receding chin. He worked with flint and he used fire. The most learned scholars cannot add much more. Facts are one thing, surmise and conjecture another. In 1868, the remains of the first really modern man were discovered. He is called the Cro-Magnon man, and he probably lived and wrestled with his environment about 50,000 years ago. The Cro-Magnon man and several similar beings lived in what we call the Paleolithic or Old Stone Age, the dawn of human history, the real beginning of the ascent of modern man. This period of slow advance lasted until about 8,000 years before Christ was born. The men of these far-off days, in Britain as elsewhere, lived in caves or pit dwellings. They knew how to make fire. They chipped flints and carved bones to defend themselves, to hunt the reindeer and the mammoth, the cave bear and the bison. They made primitive tools from flint and horns, hooks and lines to catch fish, bracelets of mammoth ivory, necklaces of fish vertebrae. They carved small figures. They have left several paintings in various places, especially far underground in the deep recesses of the limestone caves of France and Spain. The Old Stone Age slowly ended about 10,000 years ago, and the first phases of the Neolithic or New Stone Age began, as successive generations of men learned to polish their weapons and tools. They got sharper edges to cut wood or hunt animals. They made nets and baskets and rafts and boats from tree trunks. Because they learned to weave, they were able to make crude cloth and no longer relied solely on animal skins for clothing. They decorated their bodies with beads, shells, and stains. They invented the bow and arrow, made bone darts and harpoons from deer antlers, domesticated cattle, pigs, goats, sheep. They began to plant seeds and harvest crops. The food supply was increased, the population began to rise. Men began to make sod houses, grass shelters, tents of hides, wooden huts. They began to live together in settled villages and to work together in communities. The invaders who brought the Neolithic culture to England came mainly from Spain and Brittany. A smaller number came from Baltic regions. Their scattered settlements in England stretched northwards to Yorkshire, and the fourth, they worked the flint mines to an increasing extent and engaged in a widespread domestic trade. They built massive temples and stone circles such as Avebury and Stonehenge. About 2000 BC, the Neolithic Age merged slowly into the Bronze Age. Once again, new immigrants arrived in England. These peoples came mainly from the Rhine and the Danube regions, bringing with them their own cultures. The great advance was now in the production of metal tools and weapons. Mines and foundries increased in number. More tin was exported to the continent. Britain's import trade, particularly in ornaments, was extended. The rising tide of trade with Europe helped to make men familiar with the goods and techniques, the customs and characteristics of men from other regions. In 1968, Professor Richard Atkinson of Cardiff began digging at Silbury Hill, that mysterious man-made mound in Wiltshire that covers 5 acres and is about 130 feet high. The hill probably dates from 1500 to 1600 BC and is of great interest to archaeologists. The evidence, said Professor Atkinson, points to a considerable engineering skill. We are not dealing with savages and hardly with barbarians. The men of the age of metals had obviously left far behind the primitive skills of their remote ancestor, Pithecanthropus erectus. There's another map over here. So it says temporary occupation, military occupation, Roman roads. So I guess all those lines through are Roman roads. And it says temporary occupation. Crisscross pattern, same here. And then this was all military occupation. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to put a marker there, a little tab here. And next time I read from this book, I'll start there. And the tinkling sounds from my dog kind of bother you. Sorry about that. Unfortunately, he might not be with us very much longer, so I just let him. But I hope you enjoyed this book a little bit. I hope it helped you fall asleep. And yeah, thank you for watching my videos and subscribing.